We are joining for the Thursday, August 24th board workshop. I apologize for the technology mishap we had earlier, but just want to welcome our remote attendees to our work session.
Excellent. I'll go ahead and introduce a little bit of our time this afternoon. So our time together at the board workshop is technically for a board retreat for us to work together as we have a new member to the team, and that new member is me. And so we have Michelle Price, superintendent of North Central EST 171, and she will be here presenting with us and leading us through a variety of fun and interesting activities that we're excited about. Yeah, so thanks, Michelle, for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Corey. Thanks for the invite. Am I okay on the speaker? All right. She's working on getting the PowerPoint up, and so I'll just get started real quick. You'll notice there's some charts around the room. We're going to do a little activity there. I also had each member at the table here, the board, as well as Corey, draw a number because we're going to do an activity with some scenarios in a little bit in our afternoon time together. And just to make sure it wasn't set up in any particular way, it's completely random, the number you drew and the bag that you get with it. So, so thanks for having me this afternoon. I am Michelle Price. I am superintendent at the ESD. This is my 7th year, which is hard to believe. Prior to being at the Educational Service District, I spent 27 years in the Moses Lake School District as an elementary principal, assistant superintendent. Prior to that, I was a principal in Soap Lake and a special ed teacher in Tacoma. So a little bit of big district, small district experience in my 36 years. That's hard to say sometimes. My daughter's going to be 39 in September, and I keep just scratching my head thinking, how does that happen? But, you know, Wenatchee School District has a long history of being a very successful organization, school system, very community oriented with a lot of support from the community. And you guys have dynamic, deep, positive relationships, and that's well known. So, and as Corey said, every time you have a new player to the team, it makes a new team dynamic. And so he's asked me come just do a couple of activities around team dynamics, board superintendent relations. Everything I'm going to go through today is not new to any of you. And so I hope that I don't offend you with some of my information. I hope that it's just a reflection, an opportunity to say, oh yeah, we knew that, we remember that, we do that. Or maybe, there's some things I took a tidbit away today. So it really is not to offend any of you though. So you guys have a strong track record of success. The clicker. Excuse me. Well, thank you very much. All right. We have some realities for school boards today and for our school districts, and sometimes they're not really easy to lean into, but they are reality, and that's why you're here. You've been chosen by your community to represent every child in this community. And there's a whole list of things that you have an opportunity to work through. So, you know, graduation from high school is no longer just that thing that you're going for. It's like you want to make sure that students have post-secondary training and opportunities and that they're ready for whatever's ahead of them. We have big achievement gaps, and for some of our populations, they're very noticeable, and we're attending to them, making sure that we don't have those gaps and that we're making sure every child, regardless of where they are, that we are making sure that they're making sufficient gains, better than sufficient. They need to be high achievers, every child in our system. Diversity, cultural responsiveness, inclusion, looking at abilities seen as assets, not that there's something in your system that's a burden, is definitely something that you guys as a school system have chosen to do in your mission, your goals, your strategic plan. But it also takes responsible governance with that in order to make sure that you're achieving that every step of the way. Financial challenges. We all know every district right now is challenged with some financial challenges. You know, pre-ESSER dollars, you had a normal operating, COVID happens, ESSER dollars come in, and enrollment across the nation. We're seeing enrollment declines across the nation, which complicate everything. for districts. And it's certainly something that you grapple with on a regular basis. School safety and wellness of the staff is not an easy task, and it's first and foremost paramount for you, making sure that you've provided for safety of your students and your staff and for their well-being. And then collaboration with staff is something that, has become more and more critical than ever, is that how do you gather voice from your students, from your community, from your staff, and how do you make decisions and lean in on making sure that you've taken all of that into consideration, but yet knowing that you still have legal requirements and you've got things that are sometimes barriers to doing everything everybody would like you to do. So it's a huge task, right? And so there's no small, there's just nothing insignificant or small about the work you do as a school board. And I do want to first, before we really get going here, say thank you. This is a commitment. It's a heart project for you individually, and your community has no idea how many hours you spend every day trying to make sure that you're meeting the needs of every child in the school district. So on behalf of everybody, thank you. All right, looking at the research, there are 8 characteristics of an effective school board. Our school boards and our school districts. And so this research comes out of the Center for Public Education. The research project was posted in 2019. So I'm not just making it up. They did the research around 90,000 men and women who serve on school boards across the United States. And in that research, they found that highly effective school boards have 8 consistent characteristics, right? They commit to a vision of high expectations. They engage in goal setting and monitoring those goals and making sure they've set metrics for what you're going to measure, what you're going to look at, how often you're going to look at it. They use data in making decisions, accountability driven, making sure that everything you do, you're looking at data, whether it's discipline data, whether it's data from a classroom teacher that comes in with stories. I mean, all of those pieces are data. Have detailed knowledge about your district's initiatives. You collaborate with your administration. You take less time on operational issues and more time on the things that drive policy and procedures that help with student achievement. You guys are data savvy, know when to look at data, know when to ask for it. You have metrics built into your system. Align and sustain your resources. Not to make professional development a minor issue, making sure your staff are all well trained and supported. Leading as a team together with the superintendent is really important. That's where we're going to spend a lot of our time today, is just how that new team comes together and how that new team is how the relationships are built in that new team in order to do the work that you guys are doing. That strong working relationship isn't just with the superintendent, though, it's also with your teachers, with your administrators throughout the community. And lastly, you take part in team development and training. Here we are today. I know you guys have committed before to doing training and have been involved in a lot of the training that your district does with staff and whatnot. So just thank you for that commitment. But when you look at those 8 characteristics of a highly effective board, is there anything on there you would say, we're missing the mark? Laura?
It feels to me like we have not focused and dug down into the data as deeply as we have done in the past.
Okay.
And I feel like that's not quite where we should be.
Okay. So you have some opportunity here then as a new team to be able to really focus on what data do you want to see? How often do you want to see it? What are those metrics that are important to you? And to make sure that you've identified those and can look at them more deeply and more regularly. Okay, noted. Got that? Are there any others that don't feel like something that you guys feel like you're meeting that level of highly effective with these 8 characteristics yet? All right. It's okay to just have that one. Well, here's your new team. Thanks for having great photos on your website that I can pull. Must say you're a rather good looking team here. Yeah. So, I was a baseball mom. My kids are grown now, but anytime I think of a team, I think of, the positions you play on the field, the roles you play. So I was a soccer mom. I raised 4 kids. So everything you guys are doing with your kids right now, I'm like, yeah, I've been there. But I think that Wenatchee's blessed to have you guys as a team here. I'll let you read this quote, please, just for a minute. So from this, when I look at this, you have a team of 5 that are the governance board, and you have a superintendent that's part of your team, and you're interdependent, right? You rely on each other, you need each other, and you need to work together as a team. Each of you have different roles and responsibilities in that. You've got some board policy that outlines that. You have a job description that outlines that. We've got some state law that outlines that, but you work together as a team to accomplish the goals and the mission of the school district. Part of that is trusting and respecting each other. And we're going to spend a little bit of time on what that looks like, sounds like, and feels like. But what does it take to trust each other and to respect each other in this work, knowing that you all come from different places? I don't remember if this is where I wanted to do the charts or not. Hold on one second. When you put stuff together and finalizing at 11 o'clock at night and you're like, did I do that right? So part of trusting relationships and respect for each other is really coming into knowing your why. And there's 3 elements that help make successful teams. That's yourself. You're connected to other people. You know what matters to you, what's important to you. You know what brings meaning and purpose to your life, why you sit here today, and then what's your why. And so I'm going to see if I can hit this.
How do I know? A lot of people, when they think of the phrase, how do I know?
Oops, sorry. I'm hitting the wrong button. Okay, before I show this video, I do want to say, I hope I don't offend anybody. Sometimes you pull up an example and it's like, it's not intended to offend anybody. It's a great example of somebody knowing their why. And so I'm going to share it with you now.
How do I know? A lot of people, when they think of the phrase, how do I know? They always want to put the what behind it. How do I know what I'm supposed to do? The question that you really should ask is, how do I know why I'm here? Because when you know your why, your what becomes more clear and more impactful. If you know, like for instance, people know that I do comedy, but that's what I do. My why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. So I can do comedy, I can write books, I can be in a movie, because all of it is motivated by my why. In fact, I have a new web series out called Michael Jr. Break Time. We probably just did the 6th episode. It's on YouTube. So every single Wednesday at 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode on YouTube of Michael Jr. Break Time. What it is it's me. I travel around the country and I do stand-up comedy, in case you didn't know. And in the middle of my comedy set sometime, I'll stop and just talk to my audience. And we've been filming this, and it's pretty cool. So we're in Winston-Salem. I'm gonna show you a clip from Winston-Salem. And I'm just talking to this guy in the audience, and he tells me that he's a musical instructor at a school. So I was like, all right, you're a musical instructor, can you sing? Let me hear you sing a song. So this is what happened at the last episode of Michael Jr.'s Break Time. Check it. So you're a musical director.
Yes,
Cool.
sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing, you know what I'm saying? All right, all right. Now, once you give me the version, is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick. If you know which version I'm talking about, just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Now, right now I'm found, blind, but now I see. Okay. Here's what I want you to catch. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what becomes more impactful because you're walking towards or in your purpose.
All right. So if you haven't heard Michael Jr. before, he's hilarious. He does this stand-up comedy and just, I have him on my feed every once in a while just because he's hilarious. But his message here and the video shows that when you know your purpose, right, you come in with a whole different kind of passion and energy and care for what you're doing. We also know that each one of us, we come into things with the genes, right? And those are not J-E-A-N-S, but G-E-N-E-S. We have DNA that makes us who we are. We come as we are every day. We also have upbringing. You know, there's ways that we were each raised, that we come with experiences and background. We have people that we've had in our lives at different times that have helped formed us. And we've had environment where we've had times where we have to be reactive or interactive or proactive, depending on the things from our environment. Each one of those things matter when you know you're trying to implement your why. And when you're implementing your why in a big system for a lot of people, it becomes very important that you know your why. So we're going to spend just a minute here. Simon Sinek has some work that really, he says, we have a golden circle and we act, think, and communicate from the inside out. And I kind of go back to just what I just said about, you know, we have genes, we have our DNA, we've got how we were raised, our environment. So then we've taken that all in and then we push it all out somehow in the work that we do. And that golden circle includes our motivation for pursuing our goals, becomes our why in a lot of ways, our purpose, our cause, our belief systems. And then we have habits, good or bad. We've formed habits along the way that are our daily routines, our habits, our initiatives, why we do the things that we do, when we throw ourselves into something or not. And then we have goals. You know, we all try to achieve things differently. Right now, I'm trying to achieve some weight loss. Not too good with that, but I'm trying hard. So my why is because I want to be healthier, right? And so I'm going to ask you today, oops, I'm hitting the front button instead of the back button, to think about your why. And I want you to think about it through the lens of your role here on the Wenatchee School Board. And I put together a little worksheet for you just to have a pause for a moment of self-reflection, because that's always important. I was really tech savvy. This would look really nice, but I don't know if you can tell, I cut pasted. I had scotch tape. I had to tell the copy machine to do different things it didn't want to do. But if you just take a minute, and I want you to be vulnerable with us. I want you to show up today ready to share and to be willing to share what you put down. So if you'll take just a few minutes and do some reflection. I feel like there should be music going, no, 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 no. Probably don't want me singing it though. Oh, no. Yes, no. That's good. Yeah, I see some of you are doing all three boxes. Go ahead and no, go ahead. Yes, no, please go ahead and do all three. Yeah, go ahead and do all three. Sorry, those directions were not clear. Your what, how, and your why. That's so funny how communication is. Just one little word I missed out. Unless you journal regularly, it's not easy to stop and do reflection, is it? They're good reminders for us to take a pause. And it can be even more uncomfortable to share those reflections. So I am going to ask you, as part of the team, to be vulnerable with us and to trust, have this be a circle of trust that we can talk and be vulnerable, and that your service to yourselves, each other, and the community and the kids in this community, it's okay for you to share this right now. I give you permission that if you're not comfortable to say pass, but other than that, we'd love to hear your reflections, your what, how, and why. Anybody's ready?
Sure, why not? You want all three?
Sure, why not?
Okay. Okay, why? My purpose is to use my skills and abilities and influence to enable all students to achieve their fullest potential, and as a result, build a stronger and more vibrant community. My how is to participate, to be present, to listen, to assimilate, to evaluate, to learn, and contribute. My what, or my goal, is to leave the district and the world a little bit better than I found it, to have offered opportunity and encouragement to anyone, students, staff, board members, superintendent, or the general public who needs it.
Good, thank you for sharing.
Yep.
There's no rubric for scoring, it's your personal, so.
I'll go next. My why is to pave the path for those that come after me and giving back to those that paved it for me. My how is advocate, speak out, and speaking the truth. My what is be heard, represented, and acknowledged.
Thank you.
Mine is kind of just a direct, well, my why is to help every student achieve their goals and their highest potential. My how is to provide them with a great education and the best tools to learn and grow. And my what is, my goal is to see them set goals, work towards the life that they want, and succeed. It's mine.
Okay, thank you.
So kind of similar to others, that's to help, my why is to help my students and all students receive high quality education that prepares them for success after school or the real world, and to make sure they are challenged, put and pushed to succeed. How is being active and engaged, requesting and reviewing curriculum and student performance data, monitoring the areas that I have experience with through my own household and asking questions based on that, being available in the public to relay experiences and whatnot, so that we work together in the best interest of students. My what is to improve the quality and reputation of our public education in the Valley, to promote higher enrollment, keeping students enrolled, improving staff satisfaction so that we hire and retain higher quality staff to improve our education, improving student graduation and acceptance to high quality schools or trade programs after school.
Thank you.
Making a joke, being vulnerable. You said inside out. I'm actually an outside in, global to specific, starting at the abstract. So, and I sat back because I've gone through distilling pretty much this question in the last couple of months. Why? Youth and education are important both as an asset for everybody in the future and because they deserve our best efforts. That's a why. How? Just 4 words: use your skills, judge everything on merit, be open-minded, and be collegial. The what? It's really simple, very simple. Make things better for everybody. And just yesterday, I had somebody help me with some Spanish translation, use the word compañeros, companions, because that's really what we are. We need to do things for each other. And that's very abstract. And then you drill down into the concrete.
Great, thank you, Martin.
Fantastic. let's see. So my why, I felt with my deeper purpose is to impact student success by using a whatever it takes philosophy. And I just marked down a few things, school by school, program by program, leader by leader, all the way down to student by student. My how is to carefully understand the systems in which we work, create ways to increase happiness, care, and support through positively impacting staff, students, families, and the greater community. And my goal is to lead our organization through the framework of our strategic plan. To take our district to the next level as an organization, quality academics, care for the whole child, and outcomes that reflect student growth that we can be proud of.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Common threads. What did you hear from each other?
Good stuff in different ways.
Good stuff in different ways. Yes. Yeah. What were some of those? It's like you may have used different words, but similar meaning.
Trying to improve
Mhm.
others' lives and the community's
Yeah.
life as a whole, I think.
Yeah. Each one of you want to make impact positive.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the quality of the experience for the student is at the center of everything we're doing.
Very good. I heard every one of you speak to the need to support every child. That was awesome. Others? I think you can see and you heard each other talk about the what, why, and how, use different words, but what you guys come together for is the kids in this community. And that was very clear in each one of yours whys. That word, did I say that wrong? So, which is a great foundation. That's what you're building on as a team, right? You're coming with a similar why. Now you're gonna have different approaches and different ways you want to do that. So a lot of times in our approaches that we have, we come at it because we have circles of influence, right? So I'd like you to think about somebody in your past, either long ago or immediate past, or in your life right now, that it's an influencer for you. Somebody that has a high impact on how you think and what you do. Who are they? And what qualities or attributes do they have that you admire the most? And we're going to share these out loud. Take a moment to think about it. Of course, you have the ability to say pass, but you can take a minute to think about it. All right, who's your person? And why? What qualities? Attributes?
I'll start this time since I shared on opening day and some of our folks already heard. I would say that my dad was one of the biggest influences for me. And I wrote just some words down too that describe what he taught me, but I also just said my dad had high expectations of me, always knew I could do better, and never settled for what I thought was my best. But he always honored the progress I made. Like it was never like you can do better, you can always do better. It was I'm so proud of where you've come. What's next? You know, it's like, oh my gosh. And so I've tried to emulate that with my own children in a kind way to where it's like, they still want to celebrate and share with me, but we're also looking for what we have inside of us. And so some of the words that I wrote too were just relationships, love, acceptance, tolerance, work ethic, and accountability. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey.
And I'll go, and mine also, Corey, in the same vein, my dad. My dad, I did the same thing, kind of wrote a lot of words. What came to mind first was always so humble. Even though he had achieved amazing, great things like becoming a general, he was still the guy that would pick up the trash along the sidewalk to help. The man would never, ever let, if anybody is working, he will be working right alongside them. He could never let anybody do work alone. Just has the greatest integrity. And like you shared with your dad, when he said, I just love everybody. My dad has just been that guy who just loves everybody. He would walk up to strangers and hug them. But at the same time, he a high achiever, so intelligent, and demands excellence and high achievement for others, wants that and would do anything to help them achieve that. So
Great. Thanks, Catherine, for sharing.
In order, I'll go next. For me, it's my mother. She came to this country with nothing. And she, as a single mom, she showed my two sisters and I determination, perseverance, work ethic, acceptance, love, and paying it forward to those that supported her along the way. And so those are attributes that I hope to, I picked up from her and carry on to my child.
Wonderful. Thanks, Maria. Julie?
Sure. Mine was also my mother. She is the epitome of hard work for me. Similarly, she grew up very, very poor and had to work for everything she achieved, and set a good example for my sister and I. She was supportive but firm, incentivized us or encouraged us to achieve to our highest potential, but still loving at the same time. So,
Yeah, great. Thank you. Martin?
Okay, I'll begin with the personal, like everybody else, both parents, and they gave me ethical grounds on how to treat people with respect in different ways. My mother was really tough on never take advantage of anybody else, especially if you were privileged. And my dad used to say, if you're in charge, whether you're an officer or a manager, you never ask anybody to do anything that you wouldn't do yourself, and you take the flak. And so, I brought that to my forefront recently, actually. The other one is a person I don't even know, never met. Her name is Minouche Shafiq. Once upon a time, she was a deputy governor of the World Bank. She's the head of London School of Economics right now. And she wrote a book called What We Owe Each Other. And its thesis is, at different times in our lives, we always borrow versus lend, we take versus give, and wake up to the fact that it's a communal world.
Very good. Thank you.
Mine is well, there are many, but the one I'm choosing is my Aunt Betty. Elizabeth Ann Olson is her name. She was born in the early 1900s and was an adult in the times of World War II. And there were four children in her family, and she was one of the children that was chosen to go to college. And she used and respected that honor to live a complete life of service. She never had children or a husband, and she devoted her life in particular to the Red Cross, both the International and the American Red Cross. And she influenced both nationally and internationally. She started the Red Cross office in Tanzania, which when she passed away, her desire was to have her ashes taken to Tanzania. And so I, with my family, did that. We took her ashes and distributed them in under very sketchy, dangerous circumstances where she wanted to be. but her commitment to others and giving of herself was inspirational and amazing.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I think every one of us, as we just heard, right? You have this personal, you have this business side of you too. But we were heavily influenced by somebody that you had an adoring relationship with in your life. And relationships is what drives us as human beings. We need them in our lives for different things, different times, different purposes. And when we look at relationships, part of creating a really strong relationship is having trust, and caring, compassion, empathy are some of those things, those traits that have to go into those relationships. And what I just heard each of you share, regardless of who your influencer was, is that there was some element of trust formed, that you believed what they said, you respected them, you had compassion, you could put yourself in their seat for a moment. When you guys talked about your mom, their background, your aunt, and to have empathy. That connectedness, that trust is what Peter Senge found in his research that makes you part of something bigger than yourself. Right? We all have self think about ourselves. There's times where, we're very like, I know I have my moments of selfishness big time. And it's like, step back. This isn't about you. This is about somebody else. And I shouldn't put myself out in needs on this. This is something that I'm trying to help somebody else with. It's not about you, Michelle. Especially feel that in my marriage. Sometimes it's like, he's doing great. Why am I not happy with this? It's wonderful. But trust is probably the foundation of a team, and having those strong relationships where you can work together, you can be vulnerable, you can respect each other, you can put yourself in each other's shoes in any moment, any time when you're making decisions together, that you can say, let me stop and think for a minute about what this person might be trying to convey, about what they're going through, about what their experience might be, that this is such a passionate item for them. And that trust is invaluable as you guys move forward as a team. So we're going to do a little activity around trust. I'm going to ask you, yeah. We're going to talk about, what does trust look like, feel like, and sound like to you? So I've set up 3 charts around the room. I'm going to have you number off 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's see, does that work? Yeah. And each one go to one chart in partners. And I've got markers here, and I'm going to ask you when this one, I know it's a bad drawing. I've never claimed to be any sort of an artist, but that is a thermostat. So I got to tell you what it is. So, that's a thermostat there. And I put little hearts around there because we're really talking about the personal trust, right? Not a temperature outside. So, but that was the closest I could come to some sort of photo that would show what it feels like to trust. The next one is sounds like, and so those are, sound waves going out there on that chart right there. What's it sound like to be trusted or to be trustworthy? And then what's it look like to be trusted or trustworthy? So you're going to get each a couple minutes of each chart. You're going to work in partners. So we're counting off. And I'm not going to fall here. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. So let's have 1 start at trust of feels like, 2's at sounds like, and 3 that looks like. And this is just, if I were to identify what are those things that make me feel trusted or would make me trustworthy, what's it look like, sound like, feel like? I'll give you just a little bit longer on this first chart because when you go to the second one and you're just adding to it, you need less and less time, so. What's that? Page 2, okay. Just don't let it go through to the whiteboard. All right, if you'll finish up your thought there and what you're writing and go ahead and move to the next chart to the right, to your right, to your right. Looks like, sounds like, feels like.
Yeah, approachable.
We can put a check.
Warm in here. Okay, finish up your thoughts. And then if you'd move to the right, the last chart. Well, you're gonna get sugared up. I thought they were sweet enough. Yep, you can move one more chart to the right, please. And this time, as you're landing on this last chart, I really make sure you can, hit every item that I'm going to ask you to share out at the end here of what's on the chart. A bit of a gallery walk. I do the same thing. Okay. I was gonna say, I'm kind of seeing the pause, like I can't think of anything else to add. All right, we're gonna start with a little report out. Oh, you told me you thought you were done and they're home. So let's all come over here to the trust looks like chart. It's good to stretch out a little bit. Okay, we're gonna do our wing bat exercises here. Everybody's arms out. No, just kidding. I know. 30 forward, 30 back. No.
I'm not doing
The
trust ever.
Yeah, no. I wouldn't do the trust fall. Somebody drop me.
You need more than one person for that.
Yeah.
Yes,
well,
yeah.
that's definitely if I'm calling back.
Yes,
I'll take it all now. You trust them to catch here.
Exactly.
Just one more. I trust their effort, whether the ability would be totally.
You know, that's a great point. My mother, I love her dearly, but her whole right arm has arthritis and she can't lift anything like a plate or anything. And I mean, I know she would mean well, but
Trust her,
she
but
couldn't
yeah.
trust. She dropped me. So let's talk about what trust looks like to you guys. You guys want to tell us?
Whole group, not
Mhm.
just to us.
Yeah.
But actions would be follow through, sincerity, eye contact, engaged body language that came up down here too. Proximity, I assume that means close, more body language, your hands, your posture, and leaning in to the conversation. Again, eye contact. Trust looks like consistency, calm, steady, and approachable, kind, welcoming, and friendly. We said supportive and engaging. And then we started to talk about the word friendship. Does it mean friendship? What is it? What's the word when it's in a professional capacity?
Collegial.
You would have, yeah, collegial, that's a good word.
Yeah.
So sometimes it means friendship.
Not gonna spell it though.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, yeah.
There you go.
Thank you.
Right.
Great.
It looks like collaboration because
Mhm.
we have been teaming, and just that what you just saw is, she trusts me enough to ask how to spell something. And I'm not, making any judgments about since I know how to spell it, I'm
Yeah.
contributing to that.
Yeah, there's a vulnerability with that too, right? That
Right.
somebody could
Yeah.
say, well, I'm not gonna risk spelling it, and how about you give that to
Yeah,
us?
she
And
helped
that's
me
where
out
you
every
trusted.
single
Yeah, which is great. We all have different strengths. So when you look at this and you think about today's society and how people engage, are there some things that could prevent some of these from looking like trust? And I'll give you an example. I was just recently in a meeting and I walked in and everybody was sitting on their phone like this. And we were going to have a really serious conversation. So, getting that eye contact. Culturally, there's some cultures where giving eye contact is actually disrespectful. So that's your cultural sensitivity piece, is knowing, do you have anybody in your team that has a culture or background that, and would they be willing to share that? This is uncomfortable to me. There's a reason why I don't do it. Yeah, but here's how I can show you respect without doing that. I mean, those are conversations you can have when you know that there's some cultural differences. But trust are your actions. They are following through. Being collegial. You don't have to be friends. Friendly is a great word, right? We're going to show each other that respect by welcoming each other, making you feel like you belong. You're supportive of each other. So we're going to go over now, because sounds like, what does it sound like to support each other? What does it sound like to have body language that shows trust? So let's go over.
Body language, not potty language.
No, but I did say body, not potty, but we will take a break in just a few minutes. We'll go over there since they headed there. That's all right.
Wrong one.
I really like my thermostat though.
That was the parts around. I have the same artistic ability.
Stick people.
Yeah.
So trust, what does trust feel like? Safe and secure, comfort, confidence, open. It feels good. Commitment to the relationship and in fact inviting in that relationship. Trust can also feel like the ability to be vulnerable, the ability to share, and to maybe inherently believe more readily because you trust in that relationship. Comfortable, two-way reciprocity. Safe allows vulnerability and honesty. Sincerity, and then giving space to each other as well. And giving back.
Very good. Anything you guys stood out to you, or conversations that you had while you were in front of this chart?
Martin and I tried not to look at the other writing before we wrote our own, so that, which is why they might have kind of copied, but in the giving space, explain that.
Well, we talk two-way reciprocity means you give words and other communication to each other and go both ways, but then you also have the pauses in the space, so the other person has time to respond and react and isn't being pressured on. That was kind of whether those two were the same or different. And I thought they were different.
Yeah, in the classroom, we call it think time, right?
Yeah.
It's to be a good listener, to give them space to be able to respond.
But something I think Catherine corrected me on is you keep on trying to think about what the message is as opposed to what the feeling is. And on this one, certainly I kept on drifting to an interpretation, not the feeling.
Mhm.
That's what was causing the feeling as to what was the feeling.
Yeah, but that's an important point, because when you look at trust and when you play out, do you feel trustworthy or trusted? Either one, that it is an emotional stance, right? It comes from a place of feeling. And how I show up vulnerable or believe that you have confidence in me is in my own head. And how you show it to me might be different than how you might show it to somebody else. So it is a feeling, and sometimes that vulnerability in being able to say, I'm not sure if you're trusting me right now, or you have confidence that I have good intent on this right now. Having that team response to each other, to be able to talk like that and say, have questions with each other about that, because trust again is going to be your foundation in this relationship as a team. And let's go over and look at, sounds like, yes.
So that when you're talking, how does it feel? How does it feel to be in a trustworthy conversation or a relationship? It feels peaceful.
Right.
Oh, I'm writing it up.
And
Peaceful.
you might
That's
not necessarily,
good.
I mean, you might have conflict, but
Yeah.
it feels like you will return. to
Yeah.
that.
There's always going to be conflict. You weren't elected to be on this team or chosen to be on this team by the board because you all agree with each other every time. You were brought here together to be able to work through things coming from all sorts of different perspectives, but in a peaceful way and in a supportive way, to be able to be trusted by each other in this community. So peaceful is a great one, because there's a way to do that. There's a way to be confrontational and there's a way to be peaceful. And that's how you approach into this team relationship.
Right. If you don't have peace, you're like one.
Yeah. I don't know.
Wow. That's stress. I mean, every meeting is like, I don't want to go to that team meeting today because it's so stressful, right? You don't want to be that. All right, let's talk about what trust sounds like. I need one of these in our office. We have the clip-ons and this is really nice.
For all times.
Yeah, every time you move, it goes. Yeah, that's right. Go, Martin.
Okay, what do you hear? It sounds honest, it sounds open, clear, and understandable, straightforward, no dancing around, consistent. The tone, if you're talking about the voice, which that's almost like a body language, and being attentive as a listener, showing attention. And then something else that in a sense, all of these have a not the other. And one of the things that I think would be a cue is when you bounce around between being the not and the clear, you're murky and you're clear, that is creates distrust when you shift it around.
There's times sometimes where you're asking questions to seek understanding where it might not be clear, but that's different. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, you don't always want to have the
That's
exact
good.
words at the exact moment.
The vulnerability that somebody is pushing you to be provocative to get you to think.
Yeah,
Let's not confuse that with creating distrust.
exactly. Thank you
Boy,
for.
that's difficult.
It is having those conversations that way. Dig deep. Yeah. Non-judgmental is a good one on here, right? Because again, we all come with our own background, our own experiences, our relationships that have looked different in our lives across the board. And sometimes we come with preconceived ideas, right? I've got this picture in my head that Corey has shown up today with this because I know that he had this experience in our school with his son. And I know that's what he's, going to come in with. And so that setting back that judgment to be a good listener and recognizing our own bias, right? We all have bias. So how am I showing up today into this team situation? Where am I going to need to set my bias aside to make sure that as I approach the team opportunity, that I can have trust and I set my judgment aside? Because sometimes we don't have all the information. Sometimes we don't have all the facts. Sometimes we have misconceptions. We all do, right? We're human. I know mine all the time get clarified. So, all right, let's take a quick 10-minute break. Use the restroom, get a glass of water, stretch.
Here,
Mhm.
error. Somebody who never admits an error in the end becomes distrusted.
That's absolutely right. I go back to, we are all human. We all make mistakes. Where are you at with being able to accept that you make mistakes and admit them and then be able to do corrective action with them? Because that's more important than not ever making mistakes. And that admitting error. Yeah. Good. Thank you. All right, take a quick break. We'll come back at 1:30. Till 3? Okay. Perfect. I promise to have you out by then. I usually like to let class out early. I'm an overachiever like that. We'll see how you guys do in the scenarios, though. All right. So thanks for the opportunity to have that conversation about what trust looks like, sounds like, and feels like to each of you. I did say it's the foundation of relationships and working as a team together. There's a lot of research behind being trustworthy. So I just pulled out from the top researchers in trustworthiness, and this is what they've said. Doing what you say, do what you say you will do, being approachable and friendly, which you guys had on these both on yours, authenticity, empathy, humanity, showing support for team members, balancing for results with consideration and feelings of others, respectful of ideas and perspectives, words and actions are in sync, right? They do matter. Leading by example. This was a big one when I was reading about it and just really taking it in. It was the thought that everything we do as a team, everybody's watching, right? The community's watching, the admin's watching, our teachers, our paraeducators, our bus drivers, our whole community is watching how we work together as a team. And any one of us at any given time to not be a good teammate or to fall out of being a good team member or not be trustworthy impacts the whole team because they see us all as a team. And so as I was looking at that one with leading by example, it's like we have to let them see us working really well together as a team. Or you guys. Communicating openly, honest and supportive, transparent, being a good listeners, sometimes quiet. I mean, listening quietly as a really important skill in showing empathy and respect and being a good listener. Being consistent, modeling the behavior you seek. How do you want people to treat you? How do you want people to see you? Seeking feedback, and then showing appreciation was another one. How often do we stop and say, I really appreciate your thinking on this, or I know we are completely opposite ends of thinking, but I appreciate your stance and your experience. And so there's ways to do that, to make sure to appreciate each other. And just again, we're all humans, we all make mistakes, we have times where we're not going to be at our best. But those are the times when your teammates should come alongside you and recognize that you're not showing up as your best. And instead of, like, oh, Michelle's in a mood today. Let's not, is coming alongside and see what's going on. What's your story today that you have going on that's making you not show up for our team the best that you need to be? Because sometimes we all have a lot going on. So showing that appreciation. And again, if one on our team looks bad, we all look bad. So we bless you. Don't want that to happen. Maya Angelou is one of my very favorite. Her messages just are so influential and so just to the heart of things. And she says, I've learned people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did. They never forget how you make them feel. And a lot of what you did on the charts with trust really had to do a lot with how you show up with people in your relationships. We're interdependent, dependent on each other as a team. Had to throw in one baseball example. Like I said, as a baseball mom, my two boys played through college. So we had a lot of baseball experience. But everybody on the team is needed in order to have success of the team. Everybody has a different position. There's not one team member that if you pulled them out of that position, could the team be successful? It takes a great pitcher to be able to, have the offense and happen and the defense to be able to put into motion. And it takes a great catcher. And, we all have the positions on the team. And so now I'm going to lead us into just a little conversation about the roles and responsibilities on our team and where those boundaries are, where those things are of how you work together and approach it. Maybe. Oh, here we go. All right. Did I hit that right? I went way too far. I like all the way to the end here. Look at this. See what's ahead? We're gonna go so fast. Right, meeting adjourned. All right, I had this board member, and she was on my school board when I was a superintendent for all 8 years that I was the superintendent. And she had been on the board for 18 years prior to my appointment as the superintendent. And her and I used to call it bumper cars. And we'd say we're in each other's lanes. Hey, we just bumped into each other. We're in each other's lanes. And it was a good joke for us, but it was also an opportunity of how we shared with each other that there's this crossing of lines that happen with our roles. And so when you look at just the strategic operations, the school board operates in that vision, setting the desired policies, making sure to put expectations in your governance documents. Those are the things, you know, that the board high level, but makes everything else be able to be executed. There's this creative tension, right? Then the tactical is the superintendent. The superintendent gets to like put those action plans into place, and they get to figure out how they want to do that. Might not be what the board had in mind, but that communication is really important that happens. They execute the plans, they delegate the plans, they have this communication of the plans, and then making sure to monitor the progress together with the board. And then you've got operational. This is your human talent in your school district, right? They're the ones in the classroom, on the school bus, in the cafeteria that are making all the things happen with kids. And without the tactical and the strategic happening and being on the same page and being coherent, the operational staff have confusion, right? They are not sure how to go about things, or they do their own thing because there's no system in place. And so all of these work together in this way. You've got to have relationships, right? So in the research, again, effective school boards. This is what the research says effective school boards do. You're holder of the vision. You've got the focus on the what. What is our school district going to accomplish? Programs you want to offer in the district. You hire a superintendent that his success is your success. It governs your policy, not day-to-day management of the organization. Focus on academic progress, looking at continuous improvement. You want small increments of continuous improvement that are sustainable, right? Not those big jumps that you can't sustain over time. Just keep moving the needle and making sure every child is impacted in a positive way. Focused on student school performance. Where are the gaps? What are the students' needs? Monitoring progress, making sure that you're transparent, communicating it with your community, making sure that you're advocating and looking forward. You know, what's happening in public education today, and what's our responsibility as a team to be advocating for those children whose parents aren't able to advocate for themselves. You know, I may be in a position where I can say, gosh, I'm not thrilled with what's going on in school. And so instead of going in and trying to make a change and being part of the solution, I pull my child out and go do something different for them. And that's not being part of a solution. You guys have all made a decision as a team that you're going to be looking for those solutions, and you're going to work on them together and make sure this is a place every child can feel like they can succeed, and families want to send their kids. Building consensus to show support for policies is for an effective school board. That doesn't mean you always all agree. Consensus means you get to a place where y'all can live with it and believe that it will make an impact. That means there's compromise, right? You come from different areas, different expertise, different skill sets, and different things that you've had in your life, and different knowledge about where you're trying to head. But somewhere in the middle, you have to find that compromise to find the decisions for your board and for your community. All right, this one's specific on the research for school board members. So as an individual school board member. So we looked at the team piece. Now this one's with the school board members. So I love this. Going solo is a no-no. It's kind of catchy, isn't it? Yeah, you're part of a team. You're one of 5 or one of 6 on the team when your superintendent's part of that team, and you're making decisions as a team. trust and respect. I mean, I know we spent a good amount of time on trust, but it's really, really important. It's foundational to how you guys get to decisions together and work together. Understanding the difference between board work and staff work. We're going to do some scenarios here in just a few minutes and just look at what are some of those things and how do we respond as board members or as a team with your superintendent. Effective board members for each of you. Asking questions. Getting information you need when you need it, doing your homework, making sure that you're paying attention to your board packets. And when you do have questions that you not do it in a way that it draws out to the community that you're trying to take somebody out, right? That can happen on teams. A board member, a good, effective board member does that confidentially, right? Privately. Hey, let's talk. I need this information. I need to have it in the public in the board meeting, but I also don't want to have you embarrassed or called out in the middle of a meeting. There's ways to do that so that you get your information and respect each other and trust each other. Share and defend your view, but listen to the views of others. Keeping learning and being vulnerable. Again, we're all human. It's okay to admit it. Haven't found out the ticket to superhumanness yet. Respect your oath. You guys have taken a commitment each individually to honor the Constitution, to honor the laws of Washington State. And you have a commitment to be accountable to your community in that effort. And then govern for results and your shared outcomes. And you guys have done a fabulous job with your strategic plan with showing what it is you want to do. Maybe you need to spend some more time on what are those metrics and results though. Any questions so far?
Could you clarify the little piece that says pay attention to grain size, frequency, and quantity? What's meant by that?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you, Laura. So grain size, frequency, and quantity. Sometimes you have questions or you receive information and it will feel like it's a great big hairy deal. But when you dig deep, you find out there's two people in the community that really have the concern or the issue with it. And so that's that grain size. It's not that you ignore it. You want to ask questions, you want to get information, you want to understand it. But is this something that's a one-time deal or does it always happen? And then also just seeking to really understand. I'm going to use, God bless my daughter. She's the one that's going to be 39 in September, but she, in raising her, if something happened once, she'd be that person that's, it always is like this. And it's like, wait, to help me understand always. Well, you know, that one time, and it's like, okay. So that's that really attending to grain size, knowing, is it, you know, a big hairy deal? Is it here? Not that it doesn't need attention. And then frequency and quantity. And, you know, is it one person that's experiencing this? Not that we want one person to experience something in a bad way, but do we have a whole system problem or do we have something that we need to focus on a smaller scale? Okay. Great question. Thank you. Any others? Good. Ask.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Nope. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm kidding. Of course you can.
Sorry to disrupt your flow, but
You're good.
so when we have a commitment to all
Mhm.
and everyone,
Mhm.
and so when does the greater good of the all come at the cost of the one?
You know, that's a question only this board can answer and as a system at the time that it happens. There's no one best answer to that. You know, and this grain size, frequency, quantity are going to be things that you're going to evaluate things through. Do we have something that's happening all the time? Do we have something that we just have a very narrow, maybe you have one building where you've got something going on that you know it needs a different kind of attention there. And so maybe you have some policies or procedures that you've identified that are not working for all, and you need to make some modifications. But every situation is going to be different. There's no one answer for that. But I would say, I'm sorry, I would also say though, but your focus on all is your filter, right? Does what we're going through affect all?
Oops. I think it also matters, like what's the, if it's a few or if it's one, what's the long-term impact to that few or one?
Absolutely.
Because that could be gargantuan for those few or one. So yes, it might be infrequent and small, but
Impact,
still
Mhm.
super important.
super important. And that's why I said you never ignore any of those things. You just have to do your homework, understand the full picture, and future implications are part of that, right? Anytime you're looking at some of those issues. So, and, yeah. Any other questions?
I might comment on that too, because I think that is a really good question. And this is what I think, and I would like this criticized too. As a board member, your oath of office puts you into using your own sense of responsibility. So when you talk about grain size, frequency, and quantity, I think totally agree that every case is going to be different. There's no single rule, but proportionality is really, really important. Not suppressing something is really, really important for that one, let's say, exceptional issue. But I think there are times when you are going to have to decide what is proportional. You don't amputate the message and censor it, but you use your judgment based, and that's why I said on merit when you were talking about stuff before. So I think that those kind of aspects are part of it.
Absolutely. And if you remember, this particular research is on policy and governance, not on day-to-day situations on the management side or the deployment on the house. So this particular research comes out of policy and governance. Okay. All right, trust, collaboration, effective communication. Absolutely necessary. Keep holding it on there, right? School's over. No, and again, I want to go back to what I said before we started today, is that it's nothing you haven't heard or don't already know. This is just about reinforcing those things that you already know and probably do on a regular basis. Reciprocal accountability. We all have in this team equal responsibility and accountability. You guys, great picture of you at work. When I was stretching it out to put on here, I tried to make sure that nobody gained weight or you didn't have a big head if I went too big that way. So, one of the ways that teams work really well together is when you have operating principles and you have norms of how you work together. And some districts have a board operating principles and policy that they all sign off on annually and say, yes, we commit to this. And it includes things like communication with the media when problems arise, a variety of different things. And there's models out there if you're ever interested in looking at. Yes, and you have yours right front and center on your website on your board page. So, and I just grabbed them. I mean, you have board norms. I was going to copy them. I thought that's different. I can put them on the chart. But you have board norms about, that you're a governing body, distinct roles that you expect that you're going to be following them. You're cognizant of how questions are phrased, presume positive intent. That's an important one. When you have a mindset that, oh my gosh, one of our teammates is just, this is all they want out of this. That's first off, assuming that they don't have positive intent, and it puts you in a different frame of mind to get to solutions. So always presuming positive intent. Your agenda process, you've got that, so you run efficiently as a board. You adhere to your topics on your agenda and making sure that you follow protocol with taking any agenda items off or taking action on them. If there's a controversial agenda item, it has been made a second, you want to share perspectives of how you intend to vote. That's part of your board norms. Side conversations, interrupting board members, none of that. Prepared to each meeting, providing everybody an opportunity to participate. Agenda questions or items, you have a timeline in your norms. Treatment of all people, courteous, dignified, respectful atmosphere. And the board president has a big role in your team. They're the team captain, if you will, and the superintendent's the secretary to the captain. So big roles there. And then you have operating principles. And again, these are right on your board page. I don't know when the last time that you reviewed those, or if you make a commitment to everybody committing to these. So that's a question that I would have for you. How often do you look at them, and has everybody said, I can live with that, or we need to make some adjustments? I literally just did these in my board retreat yesterday with our board operating principles, and we all sign off on them together, committing to it. I won't read those all to you, you know what they are, but they are on your website. And then you have our role as a board is not to carry out policies. You hire your superintendent who deploys those policies, create surprises. Talked about that a little bit a few minutes ago. The same would be true with the superintendent, not creating surprises, abdicating board responsibilities, personal agendas, and making a promise as an individual board member. You're a team, right? Or as superintendent, you're a team. All right, these are some of the research-based things that are things you should avoid, and your board operating principles and norms speak to a lot of these. Focusing on what needs to be done, not the how. Big picture is the board's approach. Micromanaging would be, hey, Corey, before you do this, we want you to come back to the board and tell all of us for every decision. Now, I say that, but there also are processes in place in your policies. For instance, a curriculum adoption, right? You have procedures in your adoption that requires, staff input, teamwork, community input, board approval, 2 readings of an adoption. I mean, you've got things in place for some things. So it's just the day-to-day operation things that this is speaking to.
Question for clarification.
Uh-huh.
So going back to the second bullet point, board's focus appears to be on the specific details rather than the big picture. Isn't it a combination? Because our job is to review and evaluate student achievement data, which is not necessarily big picture stuff. There's a lot of grainy detail on that. And so it seems like it's a blend of big picture versus detail.
Again, this is through that policy governance piece. And so in your strategic plan, you have that you're going to monitor data. And so you do want to look at details in your data. That's different than setting policy that you're going to get down to specific examples or details. You set policy for big picture, and then procedures, map out the details, and your admin team carries it out. So this is just speaking to specific details of policy, not how you carry out the details of your strategic plan. So, but you want those specific details. You probably also don't go all the way down to the individual student level. So you're looking at by building, you're maybe looking at by demographic area, you might be looking at, the disaggregated data, but not individual student data. So when even on the data example, I would say, that specific detail isn't by teacher classroom, by individual student. It's still an umbrella size. And then these are the things that in the research talks about things that boards do, right? You have direct conversations about your perceptions. Suggesting when a task, project, or initiative identified by the board should focus on the outcomes. That's similar to your question, right? Your outcomes on student data and achievement. And you've got specific questions and initiatives identified that you're following up on those. Intermediate progress reports with the board. What does the board expect for communication? each of you need recognition and compliments, and the more you can give them to each other, because I assure you, you don't get them from out in the community or from staff, because they really don't understand how much you put into trying to make good decisions and to be a good board member. So be sure to give each other kudos. All right, Corey, we got some things for you too here. So being new in the seat of the superintendent, you come across things that have been done or that are sitting waiting to be done, or that were done in a different way than what you would have done. And you know, some folks on your team may have been part of that. So you want to be careful not to be critical of those past things. There's a time and a place for everybody and everything. And your time is now moving forward, and there might be some things that need to be fixed even, but that criticism is not looked at as something very positive by teammates. So don't neglect communication. You can never communicate enough. When I met with Corey as he was getting started, it's like, make sure you understand and know what each board member wants communication on and needs, that you guys have identified those areas that, you know, if it's a weekly communication, what's included in it? What are those important details? You know, are there surprises? No surprises. So thankfully with technology too, we can make quick phone calls and make sure everybody knows relatively quickly. I just remember that everything that you do is public record, right? If you send it out as a communication, if you send it back as a communication. So you shouldn't be saying anything to each other in written, verbal, voicemail, anything that you wouldn't expect that somebody from the public could eventually get or hear. And don't try to change things too fast, right? You're in a great place because this district has a set vision and you guys have goals and you've been part of that. So you have the great responsibility of just carrying it on without disruption. And that's what a gift to have. Yeah. All right, supporting your board during times of dissent. You know, there's going to be times of dissent. You don't always all agree. You don't always on the same page. Sometimes that means that the superintendent needs to make sure to come up with some options. You know, we've got A, B, and C. Where can we find that middle ground that's going to help us find compromise that can move our district forward and not compromise anybody's values or beliefs? Asking non-threatening questions. It's really good to ask clarifying questions. If there's something you're not sure about, words matter. How you phrase it matters. So I like the words like, help me understand. Can you tell me again what you were thinking or what your experience is that brought you here to this place? Always assume positive intent and keep the focus on your students. This was just that learning organization piece. School boards that live on the left side of the chart don't ever get to the high level student outcomes that they're expecting or wanting, because leadership does matter and you are the head and the leaders of this organization. All right, ingredients of an effective governance team. We go back to what you guys said about trust. They're all right here. You're not ignoring anything. You do address complaints. You do address items. If a complaint comes to the board, I think when I read in your policies to listen, but then to refer to your superintendent to try to find out what the issue is. And so it's important that you guys know those policies and follow them. Don't try to solve problems when people, you know, want to go all the way around. We're going to do some scenarios that will emphasize some of these things and just give us an opportunity to discuss how we handle things. Honesty, loyalty, and it's okay to disagree, right? You guys weren't elected to come here, selected as a superintendent to always all agree. Trust, mutual respect, relationships, no surprises. Got professional learning, ongoing feedback, and a written evaluation. I love this one. It's just another way to say it, but I love to cook. So what do you do with a governance team? Start with a heap of tablespoon of purpose. Don't make the mistake of using a small spoonfuls of several different objectives, as this can cause the mixture to separate. Add a large dollop of passion. The best varieties display a strong sense of energy and enthusiasm. Continue to add passion until any lumps disappear. Beat in just enough freedom to generate ideas and work with initiative. Marinate with praise and a supportive leadership style. Sweeten with a sprinkle of fun. And apply even, gentle, and continuous heat, taking care of not to burn. And be sure to test your recipe and adjust the mixture to your taste. So there is no one best answer in the governance superintendent relationship, other than that you are a team and you guys get to build that team together. So I have a question for you to think about. If there's leadership actions you could take in 2024 to continue to build this effective governing team and learning organization. I'm going to ask you to set a personal goal right now. And while you're doing that, will you show me your number? Because I have a bag for you. Number 2. That's 3. 5. I love surprises. Don't you love surprises? Don't open them yet. Individually, this is an individual. What leadership action might you personally take to continue to build this team this year? I always say we all have to have a growth goal, right? If I was to hold you accountable for your goal, I'd say, okay, we're going to have the individual appointments scheduled for December where you and I can go over your goal and what your metric was to measure whether you were achieving your goal or not, and to reset if we need to. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just kidding. Anybody want to share their goal?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Cause in 2024, I'm not gonna be here. So I'm gonna look back and smile. But if I were here, my goal would be to continually gut check to ensure balance between big picture and details, and to make sure to maintain focus on all and individuals, but weigh that against what's the big picture here.
Very good. Thank you. And wow, 2024 is going to come fast, isn't it? And there's got a couple of you that are, I should have put 2023, the rest of 2023 on there. Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, my goal is to exercise patience. And that being because we're gonna be onboarding a new superintendent as well as at least 2 new board members over the next year. So it's going to be learning new working dynamics, new repeating some of the things that we've already gone over. So learning how to work together as a new team will take a fair amount of patience, learning, understanding. So
Good for
That's my
you,
goal.
yeah. Time, energy. Yep.
I have here, I know they're overused words, but accountability and ownership. I think that's where we can continue to grow. Not that we're not growing, but I guess advance and build upon what we have. But what I mean about that is, okay, let's look at, we're big on data. And well, we want to go there. And what does that look like? And how do we, this is a little bit challenging because like Laura mentioned, well, we ask for data, we need to be data savvy. And this is where I feel like as our role, or at least my personal goal is to continue to ask those difficult questions and request that difficult, ugly data. So, and then that accountability of it, we are responsible for the growth of every single student in this district. And so that's kind of just me pushing the envelope in regards to that accountability piece.
Great. And I would just encourage you to also celebrate the good pieces. Yeah, because there's some really good things going on too. You just can't get overzealous in the celebration that you forget that we have gaps and that there's some pieces of data that are telling a story different and how you're going to shift the system to address it. Yeah, good.
I read that as goals for the team as opposed to the district, meaning the board, yeah. And all of these are shared for an individual board member, I think, and then none of them are very fancy. I think it's really important to have our annual evaluation and do it well and take it seriously. And hopefully there'll be January for the board team. I think a healthy thing is to rotate tasks and responsibilities, not necessarily committees and long-term ones, but expose each other. That creates trust. Something that Catherine, you brought up and we started to work on better. You mentioned there'll be 2 new board members at least. Orientation of new board members and bring them into the team. And we actually did some groundwork to do better work, thanks to Kim's help, in the future. And then the last one is personal. Laugh at yourself, introduces a dose of humor, and that's it.
Good, thank you. It's important. Keep it light, but serious.
I appreciate that one
Yes.
very, very much. But I went very pinpoint specific to me, good or bad. For me, studying the legislative implications to our board, our superintendent, our district, and learning more about that in order to best serve the Wenatchee School District in the legislative area.
Great.
Kind of very, very specific.
Yeah. Very good.
Okay, yeah, I kind of. Okay,
That's supposed to.
sure what was going on. I looked inwardly as well, but I think it's some of the operating principles that we shared on the posters as well, but operate with open and honest communication in order to continue to build trust. Always assume positive intent and lead with transparency and compassion.
Love it. You can see how a question can be. You got it? We've static between us. That's good. I'll sit over here. Yeah, I'm probably too close to you. Yeah. Okay. Good. Sorry if anybody's online that I did that too. All right. So we're gonna take a quick stretch break and you have a bag in front of you. I went through several of your board policies and I reflected on some experiences of, my 15 years at district office. And experiences of things that boards go through and experience. And I completely came up with them, not from anything that I know about your district, other than that you guys have policies that speak to how you would handle some of these scenarios. So each of you have 2 scenarios in your bag. And we're gonna play a little game. So let's see, do we want to role play and have one be no, we'll just have you share your scenario. So inside your bag, you have 2 scenarios. I'm going to ask, we'll take turns. You read your scenario out loud and then kind of play out how you would respond to the scenario. And then we will all ask questions and give feedback. And also, are there other things that we need to consider in such a scenario? Okay. Anybody nervous? Kind of. I promise you. So I did this with my team yesterday and we actually role played it. I had one of them be the superintendent, one of them be the board member, and so it was kind of fun. We could do that, but let's start off this way. And then if you guys want to switch it up, we can switch it up. But so reach into your bag, grab one of your scenarios. Might be a little chocolate in there for you too. Sweeten the deal. I know, right? Take one. If we have time, we'll do both, but. And then while you're doing that, just the information that I shared with you today, I didn't just make it up. I didn't just pull it out of the sky. There's some references of things that I've pulled things from. So, that it has backup. And that concludes the presentation. Although I really like that one. Anybody get when you're like, oh no. You have quite the chocolate in front of you there. If somebody's daring, willing to go first, being vulnerable, share their scenario and their thoughts on it. All right, Martin.
Should board members speak on behalf of the district and the superintendent? The scenario: an individual was hurt on the district's property. The superintendent submitted the liability claim to the insurance company and notified the board of the situation. A board member is contacted by a lawyer for the plaintiff, asking the board member questions about the safety history of the organization, as well as what he knows about the specific injury accident. What should he do? Am I supposed to go first?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think you should do?
First of all, clarify facts. The board member was not individually involved in the incident and has no first-hand knowledge of the incident.
Correct.
The board member should refer the plaintiff's lawyer to district counsel.
Very good. Those are tough situations. In a rural small community, people, you're out in the grocery store, you're at church, you're at the park, wherever you are, soccer field. People want to ask you things about things that they want to know about the district. And sometimes they're really highly sensitive information and they want to catch you off guard and get information from you that they can maybe sometimes use. In that scenario, it was an attorney making contact. And your first instinct might be, well, gosh, an attorney's calling, I need to respond. Because sometimes you may have to, But in the context of how that situation happens, your board policy would say, refer them back to the district attorney or to the superintendent to make sure to work
Yeah,
with.
actually
it.
via the superintendent, I didn't
Yep.
give the full
Yep.
answer. Mhm.
Great.
Yeah, if I just add on that, whether it's in the policy or not, is the next step being that you would contact the superintendent to say, hey, I got this call. So they know that it's out
Yeah,
there.
I wouldn't contact district council directly, sorry.
Great. Good point. Thank you. Other
Yeah.
thoughts on that kind of scenario?
Yeah, I would add comment to the attorney, you know better than this. Call the superintendent.
It is unethical, but we know things like that can happen, right? I mean, you hate to say it, but there's some really vicious folks out there. I know. Most attorneys are completely ethical and trustworthy. All right, thank you, Martin. All right, who wants to go next?
I'll go next since we're talking about ethical practices or unethical. A relative of a board member applied for an open staff position. The board member goes to the hiring supervisor and tells him or her what a great choice that person would be and sure hopes they have a place here in our district. What should the board do?
Good question.
Right, yeah. Well, first of all, I hope this doesn't reach a board level. This is between one board member. I guess this is how I would handle this scenario. And it warrants maybe a conversation between, say, the board member and the board president, the superintendent, of our board policies on ethics and conflict of interest.
Very good. Very good. So I love how you referred back to say that the board chair conversation, you're right. It wouldn't be a board meeting item. It would be an item where, oh my gosh, it comes to the attention. It probably would come to the attention of the superintendent first. They'd be like, hey, here's what happened. Superintendent calls the board chair and says, hey, we need to talk. The board chair then should meet with that board member, right? And have that conversation. Hey, what's going on here? Help me understand. Because sometimes also, you remember the game telephone line where by the time five people say it, it's not really what happened. So, it's always good, get clarifying information and whatnot, but that should be a conversation between maybe the board member that perceived that did that and the board chair and about
Yeah, and-
ethical practices.
Sorry about that. I guess when it comes to two board members, I'm just a strong believer of having, say, the superintendent there just as a third party. I don't know why I've always
Yeah.
felt that way.
That can be a good practice. There's nothing prohibiting that. You just, the awkwardness of that you're the superintendent's bosses, so just always keeping that in your frame of mind. Yep. Okay.
Can I say something since this is learning together?
Yes, this is learning
I once had
together.
a very painful experience when I had an HR responsibility for letting somebody talk one-on-one, and my attorney said, always have a witness, so.
Yes.
And then the other one is this board spent a long time working on our ethical correction policy, and it's very much along the lines of the board chair is able to have a friendly conversation with the person and coach them.
Mhm.
So we kind of went through that theoretically.
Yes, you guys have some great, actually, that's one of the reasons why I use that scenario, because you do have some great pieces in your board documents of how you guys handle things and want to handle that kind of work. So you have a new team member, he might not know that though. All right, who's next?
I'll go. A new board member is starting soon. Scenario, who is responsible for onboarding new board member, orientation of the new board member? So we have a policy about that. I can't remember exactly what it says, but I believe it says that the immediate past president bears responsibility for mentoring the new board members. I believe it might be the current president, but I think it's is it? Well, okay, it's one of those.
Okay, so you do have board policy on it. Good. The last thing you want to have happen is have a couple of new people get elected to your team. And for you to have them just show up at a board meeting and not have any information about where you've been. And, you know, I encourage our superintendents when there's people running for boards to go and at least meet with them and say, is there any information I can provide you about our district before the election? So, you know, they have every opportunity to be a informed candidate. It's also a careful walk, right? Anybody elected is going to be your boss, but you want to be welcoming. And so how do you make sure that they enter as a part of the team and develop that team with them? And if you have orientation documents, I know some boards have created a handbook for orientation. We did that for my board, that we have the board chair and I go meet and have lunch with the person, or we try to go to their home too, because there's something about getting off on that first step of relational in their home, their environment, that they're at their office, that it's about how important they are to us, that we want them to be part of this team, but asking them to come to us has a different connotation, right? So that's just me personally, how we've done it in organizations I've worked in, but having an opportunity to make sure to give them as much information as possible that their first day as a board member they can find success. And again, their success as a team member is all of your success as a team member. Good. All right, who's got the next one?
You want to go?
I'll do one. So if parents and community are upset, does this mean the superintendent is wrong? Of course. Scenario.
Always.
The superintendent has made a major change to the district's programming to the consternation of some parents. Parents question how the board could have allowed the superintendent to make that change. What should the board do?
I know this one feels really close to home.
It's really too close.
It's a common one in all districts.
I know. I'm like, I actually don't know that I have a very good response because it begs more questions. What is was the change within the superintendent's wheelhouse? I assume it was a change that was within a board directed policy. So it's not our level to, scrutinize the change, but were we made aware of the change? And so I want more information. And then I want the superintendent to explain how this is consistent with what the board's adopted and whatnot. But those are just
Great. Those are great questions to.
questions more than answers.
Yeah. But also for your superintendent, that communication with the board when you're going to be making decisions that have impact and that can have controversy, to make sure that the team is on the same page, that you spend time together going through what are the pros and cons of the different decisions, especially when you know there's going to be some that are controversial, because they're going to happen every year. Yep.
You wrote "Don't surprise" earlier on.
What's that?
Earlier on, your teaching was "Don't surprise."
Exactly. No surprises. Yep. The earlier, the better the communication. And I, encourage you. I mean, study sessions are a great opportunity to really delve into things and have an opportunity to just really get informed about whatever initiative it is that you think might have some huge implications for your community, your school, your kids, and that might have controversy with it, especially. Yeah. All right, next one.
Should board members intervene in staff disputes? I should say absolutely not. That's the question. Yeah. But the scenario is a board member gets a call from a staff member complaining about low staff morale. How should the board member respond? Answer. I mean, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. And my instinct then would be to first make sure they felt heard, and then go to the superintendent and say, this is what, that would be my reaction. I don't think it's a thing to call attention to the entire board. I think it would start with superintendent and say that this is an issue that's brought to my attention, and can you investigate?
Very good. And I think anytime that you can have the person go back to the lowest level possible to solve their problem, sometimes it's a dispute between two teachers. They're just not getting along, or a parent, a teacher, or there's a staff morale issue, or we've got an issue of dissent with, in a building with a whole grade levels, or, anything can happen. We're human beings. So, and when people get uncomfortable, sometimes they want somebody to fix the discomfort for them instead of having to try to figure out how to solve the problem for themselves. So always, first, have you tried to resolve this problem and issue at the building level with the building principal? If not, if yes, then you should talk to the superintendent. But exactly, and holding that confidentially, that's not, like you said, something you'd want to bring to the whole board and say, by the way, Foothills has this really bad morale problem. They don't. I want to make sure that I'm using that as an example. But yeah, good. Any other thoughts on that one?
I do have a question, and because this comes from real history, I normally, if I get an informal question like that, will follow the formal rules, but I ask the employee if they want it to be forwarded to whoever is the authority or not, because some people will say no, they want to gripe at you, but they don't want it to go public. So that I want to know whether that's a good or a bad thing.
I think that's a good thing after you've tried to refer them back to the building level. Because if you ask them if they want it to go forward, it might lead them to believe they don't have to go back to the building level or to the principal or to the superintendent before it would come to the board. So just where that question would happen would be my caution there. But I think it's a good question because a lot of times they just want to vent. Yeah, they don't want you to fix it. I tell my husband that all the time. I don't want you to fix this. I just want to vent.
Was the scenario, sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, in regards to the fix it piece of that, I often, if that happens, will make sure to say that the board doesn't really have any role or responsibility in these personnel things. So just in case they are kind of looking for me, that I'm going to elevate it somehow and I'm going to do something. So, I do say, have you talked to your supervisor or anyone else? If that's not working, maybe go talk to the superintendent, but we don't have any real involvement in this.
You don't, but also culture matters, and the culture of your whole system can be impacted by, this uprising of lack of morale in a building. So, and it can spread really fast across the district if it's, a big issue. So I think that just, being aware. And I love your thought of, I'm going to be a listener too. You don't want to put them off and say, I'm sorry. You got to go to your principal. Yeah. You be a respectful listener, and then, here's some things for solution. Yeah, good. Good questions.
Did the scenario preclude it being the superintendent that was involved in the conflict?
Well, I think it's kind of two different. Should board members intervene in staff disputes? I think that's a resounding no, absolutely. But a board member gets a call from a staff member complaining about low staff morale. How should you respond?
What if it's low staff morale at the district office? That's different, right?
Well, I still think you would want to make sure that they've tried to bring it to the attention of their supervisor and in their office. And if they said, oh yeah, I've talked to Corey till I'm blue in the face and there are no changes, then I think now it's a question for the board to say, let's have a conversation with Corey to find out some details here. Yeah.
Right. And that would be an executive session conversation because it's a personnel issue.
Could be.
Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Would it go straight to the entire board, or say, it's so Catherine gets the call, and does she inform the board chair, and then the chair has that conversation with the superintendent, or does it go directly from the person that heard it to the entire board?
I think based on your board operating principles and norms and your board policy of the chair's role, that it would go to the chair to have that conversation. Yeah, and you might want to have the person that got the call originally part of it too. That could be, your choice, but. All right, another scenario.
Okay, scenario. A board member does not support a decision the other 4 board members supported. The dissenting board member publicly belittles the decision and tries to sabotage it. What should the board and the superintendent do? And I think in this scenario, there's a couple of things that could be done. One, it sounds like from our discussion, the conversation could be had with the board chair and that particular board member as well. But I also think that eventually maybe a evaluation or like what we're doing right now is a look at our roles and responsibilities as a team together. Could be a way to help do that and maybe do some team building as well. But definitely that first conversation with the board chair, with that member on what's appropriate when you agree or not, or you dissent or you disagree, what's appropriate first. That'd be my thoughts.
Other thoughts? I believe there's a policy for that too. Yeah, I think, I believe our policy says that, say, the board member wants to bring it up again, even though it's been voted on the previous meeting, they request it to be on the agenda, it's on the agenda again. So if there's a request from one board member, then it is granted.
Okay, and another thought too is that, sometimes getting to consensus with all 5 of you, 6 as a team, is really important for successful implementation of something. So sometimes taking more time to study it. What's it going to take for all of us to be able to support this initiative? Because sometimes it's a simple little tweak of something. It's like, oh, well, yeah, now I can support that. So, and the other piece is, again, in this particular scenario where it talks about the dissenting board member is belittling and going out into the community and, kind of talking bad about the situation. We talked about trust, respect, teamwork, and that would be something that wouldn't fit somebody who's trustworthy and part of your team in that format. And so, kind of put that piece in there on purpose to just remind us that sometimes we don't always agree and we have to implement things. And it's okay to say, like I would say, gosh, I didn't agree with the decision, but I'm going to support it because the rest of the board did. And to have some vernacular that helps you to be able to say, sometimes we disagree, but sometimes things are going to move forward anyway. And that's what happens when you're one of 5 making a decision. And especially in the last couple of years, we've had, a number of stories across the state where, board members have not gotten along or not wanted to support decisions. And, it gets really ugly in a community really fast. So you don't want to have that. And one board member that's not trustworthy or dissenting looks bad for all of you. Makes the team look bad.
I think the challenge with that is that it's great that we have a policy that says, if a board member wants to have an agenda item on the agenda to put back on the agenda, but also as a board member, the relationship does become a little bit wrinkled, I think, because if the board has already voted on taken action on an item, and obviously that board member that dissented, and they're now asking to question that vote again, it does feel like there is some sort of trust being broken there. So.
I like that's wrinkled.
Yeah.
It's accordion relationship now. Yeah. So I would encourage you that there's ways to not get to that where you have the one that, or two, if you're in a situation where dissenting, is to stop and say, you know what, we're not there yet as a board. Let's go back to the table, study some more and find, where do we find that place that we all can live with? Because sometimes taking more time, and like I said, it can be an easy tweak on something. Sometimes you just can't get there, and then it's going to be that discomfort. And that's where you rely on your relationships, that we can be vulnerable with each other. We can agree to disagree sometimes, but we also have a system in place that has, a voting process of moving forward. And so the recognition of that. And then, for all of you as a team to step back and say, okay, we know we disagreed, but that doesn't mean that, our board member is any less, has any ill intent for their work here on our board or with us, assuming that good intent piece. All right. Who's got the next one? We still have time.
Oh, are we doing the second one?
Yeah.
Student discipline. The scenario is parent catches a board member at the grocery store. When does that ever happen? And wants to discuss the discipline actions of their neighbor's child. What should the board member do?
Yeah, that would never happen, would it?
Well, I don't know about the rest of you. It has happened. Probably will happen again.
Yep.
Maybe not to me. So you're gonna listen, to Catherine's point, you want that person to feel like you care and understand, and then give guidance in accordance with the standard operating procedures of the district. Have you gone to your teacher? Have you gone to your, if there's an internal problem, this sounds discipline actions of their neighbor's child.
Yeah.
That's a little bit like putting your nose where you don't belong. That's a teeny bit harder when you put that one in there. It's like if
Yeah.
if the parent is feeling like there's not equal application of the discipline within the classroom or the school, it seems like that's still a teacher or principal conversation. Why did this child receive this and yet this other child didn't? Or
Don't you want to say none of your business?
but if it helps to re-ground a staff member in making sure things are equitable, then maybe that's an okay thing. Or maybe there's something more about the situation that the teacher needs to know about, or the parent principal needs to know about. But it needs to go back there.
I think in today's day and age, we have neighbors and friends and colleagues that want to help out friends and neighbors and colleagues with their kids. We have, more and more grandparents. I had an email yesterday from a grandparent in our community that's worried, lives in Michigan. Is worried about his grandchild who isn't even in school yet. It's lots of those kinds of things happen. And so I think the importance of recognizing that they're concerned, and that you guys have a discipline policy that has a continuum of discipline based on the situation, based on the child, based on, the numbers of infractions. You name it, and you can't comment on it. And referring them to have your neighbor go back to the child's school or to the superintendent if they're not getting resolved there to make sure to understand it, but you never give them information about the situation or commit to delving deeper and getting back to them when they have absolutely no connection to the situation. And not even a child's parent, grandma. So, yep. All right, who's got the next one?
On the table. What if confidentiality is violated? Scenario. A board member discloses confidential information to people not on the board. What should the board do? I think it's going to depend on the nature of the breach of confidentiality. At the low end, we have our ethical policy. And it will also depend how the board got to know about it, whether it was one member, but I think you would go to the president, coaching and counseling, possibly with help, that individual board member, if it was appropriate. I think this is not one single case. It would depend on how egregious it was. And at the other extreme, this could be something litigious and legal, in which case you're talking to legal counsel, or at least through the superintendent and the board president. But I guess that I was thinking before, when you talked about something earlier, it's a good practice to raise levels one step at a time, with time to consider between each step. And an example of that is when you say go back to the school or the operating person, you counsel the person coming to the board member to go back and try and solve it at the lowest level. But don't leapfrog something to a very high conflict level when it should go through appropriate stages. But if it's really, really serious, then everybody has to expedite and make sure they don't camp on it.
And I think in situations like this, a perceived breach of confidentiality, right? So there's more information that's going to need to be received. And
Yeah, you didn't have perceived in the question.
no, I know, but wouldn't it always be perceived until you've done some fact finding, right? So if, maybe a person's perception that confidentiality has been breached. So the superintendent and the board chair can get to the situation, get more information to understand if, was it a, personnel situation in an executive session that's now ended up, out on Facebook, whatever the case might be, to decide how they move forward. And then sometimes, especially with your ethics policy, is making sure that, first you have that conversation with the board member if that did happen, but also, sometimes you may need to include legal because it could have future legal implications for you as a district. So.
Yeah,
did I
I
miss
think when
any-
you say perceived on all of these things, that's a really critical word because leaping to a conclusion is dangerous. And something that I always keep in mind for these kind of situations generally is I say, keep the door open behind you. You don't make what you call it, a too and fast conclusion. Leave the option open for the lowest possible resolution.
Yeah, we all know that when somebody brings us something, there's always the other side of the story, right? Or there's more to it, or there's something else. I think Julie said it earlier, you ask more questions, try to get to the bottom of it. And sometimes that's when you're in the thick of the moment, isn't the time to do it, but to have passed on to your board chair and superintendent are. So. All right. Who's got another one?
All right. Should board members with expertise oversee programs? Scenario, a board member has expertise in a program area where the superintendent has announced a new initiative. The board member conveys a request to the board that she be given oversight responsibility so that their expertise won't be wasted. How should the board respond to this request? So I'm saying no to full-on oversight of any program, but maybe an invitation to, participate if warranted, or to shadow or observe, and maybe have lunch with the superintendent to report observations, but no formal oversight. But I think it's important to, involve board members in areas where they do have some expertise, just to get their thoughts on things. But yeah, no delegated oversight of anything, and that would go beyond the scope of what we do.
Right, that's a day-to-day management piece that the teams that you've hired are doing, but yet you don't want to discount the expertise of some of your board members that have in those areas. So I love your ideas on other things that you could do to stay involved. Committee work, being a part of a committee. Yeah.
Or if that board member's priority is with that program, maybe it's time for that board member to step aside.
Yeah, there are times where it can almost create a conflict of interest if you have too much ownership in it. We see that a lot with athletics, right? But where
If you want to be the athletic director, you'll need to potentially resign your position on the board, or you want to be something, in a leadership position in the staff, then that's a big conflict.
I've seen where a board member wanted to be the athletic director. I was like, they wanted to be like telling him what to do every day. It's like, what? Yeah. Maria, you next?
Yeah, this is a good segue. Although fundraising is required in this organization, it has been delegated to the superintendent boosters PTA. Some board members feel that they should be involved in planning and executing fundraising events or campaigns. Other board members feel that they should be helpful to the superintendent and staff when fundraising activities take place, but do not want to be in charge of fundraising. Still, other board members feel that this is a responsibility that should not be part of the job. What should the board do? I say that this opportunity is presented at a board meeting as, hey, the football team is having a fundraiser on Saturday. If you would like to volunteer and support the team, it's at this day, at this time.
I love it.
Leave it up to the board member to decide whether they want to volunteer or not.
Oh, very good. There's always a risk in some of your fundraising efforts, boosters, those kinds of things, when you have the role as a board member or as superintendent. And so you want to walk cautiously in running those things, just to, there's perceptions and all those kinds of things out there. But absolutely, when your child's involved in stuff, you get involved in your best way with your child's program as a parent. Right. And I love that, when it's going on in your school district, certainly, if you can step up and support them in any way, that's always a good idea.
I think that's a really fine line. Just as a parent,
Uh-huh.
last week I met with Janelle and Zach, no, assistant principal. Josh, thank you. And I was very clear in my email, this is me as a parent. I'm not here as a board member. And so I always try to, make sure that people are aware that, this is me as a parent talking. This is not me talking as a school board member. And that's just really important to me because there's different responses you're going to get from your audience, whether you're talking to them as a board member versus a parent.
And you always have both hats on, right? It's one of those things that people will look at you through that lens no matter what. But I love that you clarify and say, hey, I'm coming in as a parent. Because it is a hard thing. And there's times where, you step back and you say, I'm just not going to say anything because I'm on the board or I'm, the superintendent. I'm going to let my wife go take care of this because, how it will look for me and engaging with an employee that way, even though they're my child's teacher. I mean, a number of different things that make it hard. So there's always that fine line. And just being aware of it, awareness and communicating is key, right? You always need to be the parent first. You guys got littles.
Monitoring reports. What monitoring reports? The scenario is the board has received no monitoring reports from the superintendent. What should it do? Ask him for his monitoring reports. Go ahead. Where are my monitoring reports?
So Laura would continue to mention it in various forums to remind everybody the importance of monitoring the data.
So, and I would encourage you guys to have that as a standing agenda item, is that we are going to have some data analysis on each of our board meetings and pick and choose what it's going to be. Maybe one day you're looking at how many hot lunches and cold lunches are served, and you want to know that information. Maybe you want to know discipline issue, discipline data. There's timeliness of certain data. For instance, you do fall assessment data and you'll have some assessment data just after the kids come in probably October, early November, where you've, wrapped up that data. We still don't have SBAC data released publicly, right? So we're still, so there's timeliness of when different data gets released. But also, what data do you want to see? Making sure that you guys have a calendar of when you want to see what data and is it available to you and what's most appropriate to be looking at. And then you can put a system in place of always having it in front of you.
All right.
Last one.
All right.
We're getting out early.
Okay, program decisions, board or staff. Scenario. A credit union board member has an idea about a children's banking program that thinks that thinks should be implemented. He shared it with the superintendent, but the superintendent did not proceed to implement the program. What should this, and I'm assuming credit union board member do?
What should the school board member do?
Oh, okay. What should a school board member do, or?
I'm a credit union board member and I go to Laura and say, we've got
Oh, I
this
see.
great program.
Okay,
We can put a cash machine in your school. We can give kids bank accounts. We can. It might be a broad issue across multiple districts, just saying. So the question was, the superintendent decided not to push it forward as a program for the district at this time. How does the board respond? The school board.
right. Well, yeah, it could go either way. Like, it could be the best thing that never happened, or it could be something that, if the credit union member had maybe convinced this said board member that this is exactly what needs to happen, then I would encourage the board member to, check with the superintendent and say, hey, where is this on the spectrum of priorities? And where does this fall in the likelihood of coming in front of the board at some point?
Good. Any other thoughts?
One thought is that depending on their level at the credit union, it could implicate a conflict of interest if it were pursued in some ways. But another thought in terms of implementation is, say you did have that conversation with the superintendent, you didn't feel necessarily like it needs to be advanced, but we still have that fallback policy of, if you want anything on the agenda at a board meeting, you could ask for it individually. So I think the superintendent's response would be, I don't feel this is programmatically appropriate, assuming there's no conflict of interest. You're more than welcome to add it to the agenda as an item to discuss with the broader board.
Good.
I have a question for that because I was just thinking about it. We normally, I think, communicate fairly well. I can't think of a situation. If a board member wanted to introduce something as an agenda, in our case, should they introduce it at the agenda meeting via the president and the superintendent? So that meeting discusses it, or bring it out at a full board meeting?
Oh, I think that's in your board operating principles. And I think I read that
Then I
by
don't know it. Okay.
10 a.m. at a certain time that you'll let the chair know.
I think it covers
Does that
two
sound
things,
right?
because I think in our operating norm, it says we won't necessarily surprise with new items. So I think the appropriate place would be, if you knew in advance, to bring it up at that meeting. But I don't think that necessarily gives the folks at the meeting the opportunity to say, no, we're not putting that on the agenda. I think it's just saying, this has been requested to be on the agenda so they can address it. So put it on the agenda. But I think we have two policies there that kind of overlap.
I think it could go either way. I just think about the regional project that's happening, right? I think the email was initially discussed during a board meeting, and we agreed that, oh yeah, let's invite them for a presentation. I think in the past, we've done a good job about, we've gotten emails for us clean out my stuff through the one golf or first golf. It was initiated by email, and superintendent said, oh, would the board be interested in having this as a presentation at the next meeting? So I guess what we've been doing has kind of worked.
And I would also just reiterate, no surprises, right? You don't want to come into the board and say, I'd like to make an adjustment to the agenda during a public board meeting, and that communication with the chair prior to the agenda meeting so that they can work with you on getting it on there. If there's research needed or information needed to be collected by the staff, by the superintendent, they have time to do that before the board meeting. Right. Well, that's all I have for you today. I hope it's been a productive time together and a little fun. And again, the whole intent was not to bring you a bunch of new information, but just to reiterate things you already know, and to reminder with the new team member what coming together as a team is, and how important those relationships are, and the foundation of trust. So. Thank you, Michelle. You're very
Yes, thank you very much, Michelle.
Spend the afternoon with you.
Yeah.
And thanks for lunch too.
Excellent. Yes, and thank you, board members, today for coming. I would say all of you came with the items that are listed on our trust documents today. So thank you for that. And thank you for welcoming me as a new member of your team, and look forward to us taking everything that we learned today and having an excellent and productive year. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to wrap up, I think there would be value, again, this to our last scenario. I think there would be value in revisiting the board norms and operating principles. The last time they were reviewed is when Julie and I had we had just been appointed, which was January of 2020. So it's been over 3 years since we've visited those. And we've also talked to, I really like the idea of having standard agenda items. And we do have our consent agenda, but also look at different board developments. I know we have board workshops, but maybe being a little bit more intentional once a quarter to have a board development session.
self-evaluation through WASDA. One of those areas is what professional development might you like to have, might really help you guys identify where are those things that you want to have professional development at. And how do you schedule them throughout the year?
Yeah, perfect. Okay, any further comment, discussion? Perfect. It's 2:48, so our meeting is adjourned.
Oh. Thank you, thank you. Oh.